This is such an important issue, and it's something that all of America wants to see happen. And frankly, Americans want to be protected. The Senate has a constitutional duty and a constitutional authority to actually protect our country. We can't be a sovereign country if we don't have borders.
Republican senators are at the White House right now, meeting with President Trump, trying to wrangle up the votes to avoid a government shutdown. This after the House approves a short-term spending bill that would provide $5.7 billion for President Trump's long-promised wall. Let's talk about it with Marc. He's a columnist for the Washington Post, a Fox News contributor, and a fellow at the American Enterprise Institute. Marc, we mentioned Republican senators are meeting with the president, but he needs some Democratic votes if he's going to get this thing out of the Senate in a way that provides funding for the wall. And Democrats don't seem inclined to go along.
Yeah, and I'm sure that Mitch McConnell is explaining that to the president right now, because the president tweeted this morning that he wants Mitch McConnell to use the nuclear option and pass it with just Republican votes. And I'm sure Mitch McConnell has explained to him that that would be a disaster. That's the one thing that the Republicans do not want to do, because if they give up the filibuster and pass this with a simple majority, one day they will come to regret it one day when they are no longer in the majority. If you do want proof of that, just look at what happened to the Democrats when Harry Reid made the disastrous decision to invoke the judicial filibuster, to get rid of the judicial filibuster, and what happened to the Supreme Court. This backfired big time on the Democrats. If we get rid of the legislative filibuster, then the same thing will happen to Republicans one day down the line. So there's no way around getting Democratic votes.
So you're arguing that it is a good thing that you need 60 votes in the Senate to pass major spending legislation, even if the president, even if it means the Democrats can hold up the president's plans for the wall.
Sure, because the purpose of that is to prevent a tyranny of the majority. What happens if in 2 years from now or 6 years from now there's a Democratic president, a Democratic House, and a Democratic Senate? Then they can get anything done they want. There's no check on their power. So, you know, the reality is Trump is not going to get funding for the wall without Democratic buy-in. I mean, this is the problem with the whole shutdown scenario, because what we're fighting about right now is not funding for the border wall. We're talking about funding for a down payment on the border wall. He's asking for $5 billion. Funding the wall is going to cost $20 to $25 billion. So no matter what happens, he's got to get the Democrats next year, the new House majority, to buy in and trade the wall for something else on their list. This is making it harder for them to do that, because he's turned it into a manhood issue with the Democrats. And so if they later give in and make a trade for the border wall funding for something else that they want, then their base will destroy them. So this is a small fight over a small portion of the border, when Trump should be finding a way to make it easier for the new House majority of the Democrats to come to some sort of a compromise in which they fully fund the border wall in exchange for something that they campaigned on in 2018 and that Trump doesn't want to give them. That's essentially how you compromise. Both sides give something they don't want to give up, and this makes it harder to reach that compromise.
We'll see what happens about 13 hours from now, stroke midnight on the East Coast. Want to turn your attention to what's going on with regard to the president's plans to pull troops out of Syria. You wrote a piece for FoxNews.com. The headline is, Trump is about to repeat Obama's mistake in the Middle East. And your closing line, when your enemies are cheering you have made a mistake, it is not too late to change course. You're saying the president is mistaken, in your view, in pulling troops out of Syria.
Yeah, as is every national security conservative on Capitol Hill and in the national security establishment. I mean, this is the Obama foreign policy. This is what Obama did in 2011 when he pulled out all American troops out of Iraq, and the result was the disastrous rise of ISIS, which took over a massive caliphate the size of Great Britain and spread its tentacles around the world, carrying out terrorist attacks everywhere. The difference is that Obama didn't have the benefit of hindsight. He should have seen it coming, but he didn't. Donald Trump has the benefit of hindsight. In fact, he campaigned against Obama's withdrawal from Iraq. Remember when he called Barack Obama the founder of ISIS, because he pulled all of our troops out of Iraq and allowed them to rise up. Now, and he's, by the way, spent the last 2 years dealing with the disastrous consequences of Obama's withdrawal, having to beat back ISIS. So why would he now repeat Obama's mistake?
We're not seeing the daily beheadings that we used to see. Is ISIS not defeated?
They are not defeated. So look, there's two things. Donald Trump did an incredible achievement in unleashing our military to remove them from their physical caliphate. And he did that. They no longer control territory. But keep in mind, in 2011, they didn't control any territory either. They had about, according to the CIA, they had about 700 fighters left in 2011 when Obama pulled out. And because we took our boot off their necks, they rose up and developed tens of thousands of fighters and became a global terrorist network. Right now, the Defense Department estimates that they've still got about 30,000 fighters in Syria and Iraq. They've got at least $400 million that they've taken stolen from Iraqi banks and brought with them. And so they are actually more powerful now as an insurgent. They've done is reverted to an insurgency. They're more powerful than they were before Bush's surge. So taking our boot off of their necks right now will be disastrous. It's the wrong decision, and Donald Trump knows this because he castigated Barack Obama for the mistake he made in doing that.
And you're imploring the president publicly to change his mind on that. We'll see what happens. Marc Thiessen, American Enterprise Institute. Thank you.
Thanks.
Well, thousands of vacations plans and many derailed by drones. Interference in its airspace.